another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals. Tonight, I have some very special guests with me, Snooks and Lovey, hosts of the Married into Crazy podcast, and they're also marriage coaches. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I know Ernie from Extreme Execution Coaches, from coaching. So we have a relationship on that end. And I knew that he was doing marriage coaching. I knew that he had a podcast. And what I found most interesting was that he was doing it right along with his wife. A lot of times we don't see both people. We either see one or the other. So it's the real reason why it really got me interested. I love to hear both sides of the story because we know that one can be skewed. So tell us a little bit about how you guys met, your history, how long you've been married, and then we'll just dive right in.
Now, are we supposed to keep it kid friendly?
Please. But you don't have to, because I always mark it as not really, but you know, we never know who's watching.
Well, I didn't know if I told the story about when she was on the pole and I saved her, or the church story. I didn't know which one to go. Oh, go ahead, Snooks.
So silly. Okay, so Lovey and I have been married for almost 24 years. It would be 24 years in January 4th. We met. It was a blind, it wasn't a date. He likes to say it was a blind date, but it wasn't a blind date. It was more like a blind setup. I worked with one of his mom's best friends, and she told me about this guy who was just so nice, and she wanted me to meet him. And it was kind of out of the blue. And I was like, no, thank you. You know, but she was kind of persistent. She gave me his phone number multiple times. I threw his number away, and she just kept wanting me to call him. And okay, first of all, I was like, if I have to call him, that's really a no-go. I'm not trying to chase no one. So not calling. Fast forward, probably about 6 months later, he showed up at my Christmas party for my company. I didn't know he was going to be there until that day. So I wasn't real happy about that. And
well, see, and on top of that, I went to the party because we were bamboozled. That was the very first episode in our podcast.
Yeah.
And we had mutual friends that conspired against us to force us to meet each other. Because not only did she throw my number away, I threw her number away as well.
Wow.
We just weren't in that space, right? Because I was a single parent. I had an infant, toddler / child. And I wasn't trying to meet anyone. And she was out of a bad relationship, and she didn't want to meet anyone.
Okay, not only that, though, I had this, there's certain checkpoints or checklists. I did not date anyone with children. I just didn't do it. I saw my cousins and, baby mama drama, baby daddy drama. I'm like, I'm good on that. I promise you I don't do that. And then when I found out that he had a small child, I was like, oh, so the mom is still around. So I'm really good on that. No, thank you. So that was probably the biggest thing that made me not even want to meet him. So.
And I know this isn't a 2-hour podcast, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit.
Whatever he asked. I know you're ashamed.
So fast forward. So we met at the party. I was tricked into meeting her. She was tricked into meeting me. They sat us right next to each other. And you know my nature. I have a tendency to talk. So I'll talk to anybody.
And talk.
You put me in a room with my shadow, and we'll have a 3-hour-long conversation.
And he talked. And I was like, would he stop talking to me? I didn't even want to meet you.
She got up and told everybody she knew.
I knew you would do that. I didn't get up and tell everybody that. I did tell my friend and someone else. I was like, I don't even know why they thought I would want to meet him, because he's nerdy. No, thank you. But I didn't get up and make a formal announcement at the party. He loves to say that, but that didn't happen that way.
And so it got back to me. And through a series of events, several other things took place. There were some other opportunities for us to meet, again, because of our mutual friends. So from December 16th, was it 95?
95.
December 16th, 95 is when that party was. It's a day that goes down in infamy. And we saw each other again on the 23rd, because that was my grandparents' 50th anniversary. She saw me in my tux. And so she was like, oh, nerd guy gang. And then we ended up meeting at her friend's house for a Christmas Eve get together. And again, it was always around other people. Like Tess and I was like, okay, is this really somebody I want to talk to? What have you? And then on December 25th, we went on our first date.
That's not what happened. Lovey was head over heels, first sight. Love at first sight.
That's true. That's documented.
See, thank you. Oh my gosh, just tell the truth. So it took me 8 days to know that he was the one. He was first day, I was 8 days later, and then we were engaged in 4 months.
Wow. So Rocky Star. What?
Rocky 8 days.
Rocky 8 days. What through those 8 days happened to make you guys realize, well, for Lovey on the first day, and then for you on the 8th day, what was it about the other person that made you say, okay, let's do this?
Well, for me. Wait, you said Lovey? Because I was day one.
He was saying Lovey for day one. That was obvious. You saw me and you were just
day
like,
one.
Wow.
Her smile. Her smile.
Say it.
And her mammary glands. Because she was dressed to the nines.
Oh my God.
For that Christmas party. No, it was the smile and just her demeanor, and it was just something about the way she carried herself where I just had that feeling that I'm like, she's the one.
Okay.
That's right.
And then
for me, I'm sorry. So at the end of the Christmas party, we exchanged phone numbers more out of pleasantry than anything else. And he called me and we talked, and I was like, okay, he's a nice guy, you know. And then I talked to the next day or what have you. He invited me to the party. We talked again and we just really connected. It was just like a real connection. But the biggest connection happened on Christmas Eve when we were at our friend's house. We went and sat in the living room away from everyone else, and we sat and we talked for like 3 hours just straight. And after that, I was just like, oh, this is the guy. I'm going to marry him. I'm ready to go get married right now. So it was just a conversation. Everything just clicked.
Sound like an arranged marriage in the beginning.
Exactly.
Set up and, oh, you're going to date. So, and it worked out because we're sitting here today. Tell me about this steak knife and the enraged ex-boyfriend.
So Snooks was in a relationship when we first met.
Not when we met.
No. Let me finish.
Okay.
When we first met, she had told me, she's like, hey, I got this crazy ex-boyfriend. Every blue moon, he pops up. And honestly, and it was like, she was in the most inopportune times, he'll show up, he'll knock on the door, this, that, and the other. And so I was like, is that going to be a challenge? And she was like, no. So I told her I can handle it. And she was like, no, she doesn't want confrontation. She doesn't like conflict. Okay. So she said, just if he shows up, just let me handle it. So I figured, okay, you know what? As long as you're handling what you need to do, I won't get involved. So as we started dating, there were a couple of times old boy popped up at the house and I'm trying to jump up to go get the door. And she's like, no, just sit down. I got to handle it. She always handled it. Never knew what he looked like other than in pictures. Never saw him. So then fast forward 4 months, we get engaged. He finds out I'm at work and he shows up to church. He goes to our church.
That's when he found out. He came to church that Sunday. And I was like, ooh, the devil is busy. So he comes to church that Sunday of all Sundays, and he sees a ring on my hand. And he was like, what's that? And I said, I'm engaged. And he was like, quit playing. I was like, I'm not. I'm engaged, And so he was like, wait, what do you mean? And I was like, dude, seriously, come on. We've been broke up for over a year now. Every time you try to come around, it's just like, okay, go away. There was a series of events that happened. I tried to get a restraining order because he started showing up to my job. He walked in my job just out of the blue. I'm working and I turn around and he's right there. He proposed and it was just a whole bunch of, I'm just like, So tried to get a restraining order. They denied that because they said there was
no
history of violence or something crazy like that. And so they didn't say, it didn't give other options, but whatever. So he was like, he just started blowing me up that day. I went home and he started calling the house and I was like, okay, no, just leave it alone. I didn't think that he would come back. So he came over to the house, Lovey. We went to a birthday party came back. He showed up later on that evening, forced his way into the house. He had a knife in his hand. I didn't know he had a knife in his hand, but
I didn't know he had a knife in his hand. So what happened was when he showed up, we were in the bedroom, because I had to go, at the time I was working like 3 jobs. And so, and going to school full time. And so her brother would come over, her eldest brother would come over at times, and he wasn't in the best state of minds back in those days. And so it sounded like he was getting into an argument with her cousin, another female that happened to stay with her. So she gets up to go say, what are these two arguing about?
I wasn't even in bed.
I was.
Down.
Yeah.
I was.
So she goes out to handle it. Next thing I know, she comes flying back, and it was hardwood floor. She comes flying back into the bedroom and trips over like a laundry basket, and basically hits her head on the ground. Not too hard, but hits her head. But I jump up thinking, okay, her brother is tripping. Brother or not, we're about to battle. So I turned the corner thinking I was going to fight her brother.
And the light was off in the hallway.
And yeah, completely dark. The only light coming into the house from the front side was from the porch, because the hallway light was completely off, so it was dark. When I turned the corner, I saw a silhouette, and I thought, well, that's not her brother. And then it clicked like, oh, it's dude. And so I charged him. We got into it. I put him down a couple of times, and her cousin, she was trying to pull me off of him.
No, my cousin and I were trying to break it up, and I'm screaming Lovey's name, and she's screaming his name, and she's like, no, get out, stop, blah, 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 whatever. And so when they finally, we finally like got them apart, Lovey's standing in the hallway. Like, he thinks this is different. I was there. I saw it. Anyway, so he's standing in the hallway.
I wasn't there.
I was the witness. Anyway, he's standing in the hallway, and Lovey says, he has his hand over his chest. He goes, I think he cut me. And I said, what? And you know, when it's like a movie, slow motion. So when he said, I think he cut me, I said, what? And I turned around and I look, and he has his hands up like, okay, I'm leaving, like, but there's a knife in his hand. And my cousin is pushing him out the door, and I saw the knife, and I was like, oh my gosh. So I turned the light on. There was blood in the hallway on the floor.
It wasn't just blood. It was a lot of blood.
So, well, let me finish. So Lovey had his hand, and I said, move your hand. And he moved his hand. And when he moved his hand, it was just like, like blood was just like.
It was like in the movies, man. It was crazy.
Yeah,
it was really
crazy.
It was a trajectory. I mean, there was actually, like, every time the heart was beating.
Yeah, basically.
It was shooting
like
blood
yeah.
out of my, like a stream out of my chest.
So he says, he goes, we got to go. And so I must have told my cousin to call 911, as I'm thinking in my head, I got to take him to the hospital. So I'm trying to find my shoes, and he's sitting down on the bed, and he says, hurry. So, and then after he said, hurry, he just fell backwards on the bed. And I was like, oh my God. So I go over, and he's turning blue, and he's like wheezing. So, and I'm thinking, okay, what do you see in the movies? So I jump up, and I know he's stabbed in chest. So I crawl on top of him. I have my knee on his heart. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, he might choke on his blood. So I'm holding the back of his head up, like, so he can breathe. And I'm trying to keep my knee down, you know, keep pressure. And so she's on the phone with 911, and they're asking all these questions. And I'm just like, because they're trying to find out information about him. After, in my crazy mind, I didn't know that they already dispatched the police and whatever. So Lovey, then he, and because he's heavy, I'm like, I can't keep holding him. Then he starts going into convulsions, and I think, oh my God, you know. So right at that time, the police officer, she ran in the room, she came back, and then she was like, okay. And then the guy, the paramedic came, and so he says, they're trying to tell me to leave the room. And I was like, no. And he was like, we got it from here. It's okay to get up. But he was moving slow. And I promise you, I know this sounds very crazy. I swear to you, he was eating a green apple. I know he was eating a green apple. I don't know why, but I saw a green apple in his hand. He was walking in the room. He was very nonchalant. And I was just like, are you kidding me right now? Lovey's gonna die. So she tells us, she makes me go in the front. My cousin's up front. She's hysterical, but I'm like dead calm. And so they're getting Lovey out and everything. So I'm standing in the hallway, and I see them take him out, and he's talking the guy's talking to Lovey, and he's saying something, and Lovey does a thumbs up. And see, he goes, okay, good, he's coherent. And so then they leave.
So at that point, you want to hear more?
Sorry.
I'm like, at this point, you got stabbed for love. Y'all can't have no problems in your marriage. I mean, that's forever.
You know what's funny though is you would think that once you get past that, that's when you enter happily ever after. But realistically, that's when the real work began. Because even when we got into the ambulance and we're going and I'm fighting with the guy because I keep pulling my mask off. I remember this part. And because I thought I was having an asthma attack. Hindsight, my left lung had collapsed.
Wow.
And, you know, because of the blood and everything. And so I kept pulling off and the guy lied to me and he said, no, the medicine is in the oxygen. So I remember going, oh, okay. So I put it back on thinking, okay, everything's going to be all right. And I don't know if this is too graphic, but I had said, hey, do you mind if I lose my manners? Meaning pass gas. Mm-hmm. And the guy says, do what you got to do. But when I did, I lost all bodily functions. Everything went. Wow. And he tapped the window and said, possible DOA. And then next thing I know, I wake up, I'm intubated, I'm in a hospital, my mom's sitting next to me, all that happens. But to go through all of that, and that was the first operation. The second one had to happen about a month and a half later, because I was in recovery in the ICU. There was a nurse that was attending to me, and she just did not like my progress. She said, vitals are fine. She goes, but there's something odd about the way my chest was vibrating every time. Like, so basically with my heartbeat, it was just vibrating. I was at UC Davis Hospital, which is a teaching institution. So the attending cardiologist brought, like, if this was a heart model, they brought a class through, and it was showing that the only way that, you know, like 7 or 8 students, you know, the only way that the knife could have entered his heart was this way. And, you know, at 1 millimeter in any direction, his heart would have exploded. And I'm like, listen, like, wait, what? No one told me that. And so he says, I've never seen anything like it. You know, this is a different kind of trauma. Well, the nurse told him that I was presenting in a really strange way. And so he said, oh, don't worry about it. You know, it's consistent with the trauma. And she checked him. This is a nurse checking a cardiologist. And she said, well, you just told that group that you've never seen anything like this. So how could it be consistent with this type of trauma if you've never seen this kind of trauma? So she went to the chief of cardiology for UC Davis Hospital and told her what was going on. He ordered a series of tests. And so they ordered an echocardiogram and something else where they shot some dye in. And they found that on the back side of my heart, there was another hole. And that the reason why my chest was vibrating is because if you ever put a balloon that was full and put like a little hole in it, and then you put it underwater, that's what my heart looked like, where blood was shooting out the back side of my heart, and my heart was vibrating to the extent that it was vibrating my entire chest. Wow. So they had to schedule a second open heart surgery. So I had to heal well enough from the first time they cracked my chest open, long enough to go back in and go through another one.
It was less than 2 months.
It was about a month and a half. And God is so good that from where I lived, maybe like a 20-minute, maybe about a 30-minute walk from where I actually lived, there was a hospital where the second-rated cardiothoracic surgeon in the world was in his where he was working out of. So the best person in the world that could have possibly handled it, because I had a 40% chance of survival for that second operation, because they go to the front, work on the back. And I've run half marathons since then. It's been good. But it wasn't until 4 years later that the real work began.
Take us there, because you said the real work twice. So I'm imagining there was some work, and I'm just trying to get over that. Man, this is a traumatic beginning. Lots of just drama. And then you came through and pulled through. I would think, or most people would think, you know, that would make us inseparable and breakable, perfect almost, because, hey, we went through so much. There's no way we can let little things or other issues creep up. So take us into that 4 years later. What does it start to look like?
I'll tell you, if it was a Disney movie, it would have sounded exactly what you said. But this was more like a, one of those, what's that channel? Lifetime.
The LMN channel.
and so the same, so my mother was instrumental in trying to have us meet. She thought Ronna was this perfect girl that I should meet and all that. Well, it quickly went from, this is the girl I want you to meet, to
enemy of the state.
Wow.
This is the chick that almost got you killed.
Yeah.
And so with that came a lot of distrust. And they went from joy to anguish, from hugs to finger pointing. So there was a lot of distrust from my side of the family towards her side. And it didn't help that the newspaper,
mine, just me.
It didn't help that the newspaper ran an article calling it a love triangle gone bad.
Yes.
But we had a friend of the family that was relatively large in the local media at the time. So she spoke to some people, ended up getting a retraction, but nobody ever reached the retraction.
Right.
And so, but there was the seeds of distrust had been planted. Mm-hmm. And so for 4 years, I didn't stand up and be the man that I was supposed to be. I didn't protect my wife from my family. I didn't protect her from my mother. I didn't stand up and I was trying to make everybody happy rather than, be a husband, like it says biblically, cleave, right? And so what I did was cause a lot of issues in that process. And, half my family, I won't say half, a couple of the men in my family said they were going to boycott the wedding, including my grandfather. There was just a lot of stuff that went down that became a weight on her. And rather than deal with it over the course of 4 years, pushed it aside, stuck it under the bed, hid it in the backyard, buried it wherever I could until it came to a head.
Well, I mean, and that is true. One thing that it's like that whole subject of the stabbing and the ex and all that, it was almost like it was like a taboo type of subject. It was like basically the incident, the tragedy that happened. And it was the tragedy that happened to Lovey. So whenever, I won't say whenever, it wasn't so much that they kept talking about that. It was just the way that I say that I felt that I was being treated. So like he said, his mom was instrumental in us wanting to meet. She's like my biggest cheerleader, but then she was like my arch nemesis after that happened. And, she pulls a lot of weight in the family as far as that's how I viewed it. So it's like, yeah, come on, get on my team, and which was fine. I'm like, do you, but I felt that I was like, where are you right now? Where are you, Lovey? We're supposed to be in this together, but it wasn't, I don't want to say we weren't in it together. So like he said, initially he was a single parent and just freshly out of the service, and his mother was also very instrumental in helping in the very early ages or very early stages with our son. So that was kind of, it was like, I felt like dangling the carrot in front of the donkey or whatever. It's like, well, I did this for you, so you gotta, and it was always these contingencies, I felt like.
She just called me a donkey?
I don't mean it like that. But what I meant was, you dangle a carrot and it's like, okay, do you want this? It was always, it could never be a straightforward relationship. I always felt that there were contingencies about everything that we did, or there were second guesses. And so I'm just like, you know what? I'm either going to be your wife or she's going to be your wife. That's kind of how I felt. And instead of us addressing really the issue and what was going on, we kind of just swept it under the rug or just kind of bypassed it. I felt some kind of way, I'm be honest, I've said this to him before, like I felt like, how could I really, almost in a sense, how am I going to complain about how I'm feeling when you got stabbed? So I carried a lot of that guilt that I felt like inevitably it really was my fault that he got stabbed, even though I didn't do any of the things that they thought I did. But if him and I weren't together, oh, crazy wouldn't have came and tried to stab me. But, so I carried a lot of that by myself. I didn't share any of this with him. And it just was just more piling. And I was like, you know what? I can't.
Taurus, in situations like this, what people forget, any couple that goes through a traumatic experience, loss of a child, stabbing, like in our case, car accident, if something happens to one individual, people focus on that individual. There was so much focus on me that they didn't realize there's collateral damage as well.
Right.
She was a victim as well, but in a different capacity, right? It's almost like through the looking glass on the other
They're
side.
like, nah, she didn't get stabbed. She wasn't a victim.
No, but they forget about the caregivers.
Right.
They forget about those individuals whose lives are completely disrupted. And truth be told, so did I. I wasn't walking around saying, I got stabbed, look at my scars. But it was one of those things where I've got like a multitude of scars, but it was one of those things where it was always about me. And I ended up subscribing to that. Like, you know, I'm the person that went through this. I went through this. And at no point, at least early on, did I realize that she went through it as well. She was the one carrying this guilt, like it's my fault. She was the one that, you know, had to step into a relationship to all of a sudden there was like this blended family.
Mm-hmm.
She had to learn how to be a wife, learn how to be a mother, a caregiver for a period of time before we even got married.
Yeah.
And then so when all this took place, our 4-year anniversary, we're at Morton's. I don't know if you're familiar with Morton's Steakhouse.
No, I'm not.
It's one of those old derby, kind of like Ruth's Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so like a higher end spot, but a little bit more like the old swanky Hollywood things, right? So they like that. So anyway, we're at dinner, 4-year anniversary, and across the table, she's like, I want a divorce.
I didn't just come out and say it
She
like
said it
that.
like that.
I did not come out and say it like that. I did say it.
She had a knife in her hand, so I couldn't really offer a rebuttal.
Foul for that. No, I didn't.
And so, but that's when, okay, so we'll tell this part, and then, you know, then you can ask all the questions, move on, what have you. She decided she wanted to. I'm of the mindset of, okay, if I make a choice, that's it. I don't generally go back and change my mind. So if I agree that we're going to get this divorce, you know, then that's it. There is no, you know, do-overs. And she's like, deuces.
I was like, okay.
She's
Cool with
like,
that, you know.
keep it moving yesterday.
Yeah.
And so.
So what happened was I got,
Tell it quick though.
I know you're shame, Mr. Here's in the diagram and you doing all that. Now you want to say be quick. So anyway, so the day before Lovey was going to move out, I got laid off from my job. And so I called him and I was like, hey, I just got laid off. And he was like, okay. So, and this just really speaks to his character right here. And so he was like, okay. And I was like, so I'm just pretty much letting you know. He's like, all right. So he just starts making plans. All right. So I'm going to call the apartment complex and I'm going to tell them that I'm not going to move. I'll cancel the U-Haul. But my mind, I'm dead set. I was like, wait, hold on. Why are you doing all that? And he's like, well, because you just got laid off. And I was like, okay. And he's like, look, I'm going to make sure that my family is taken care of, because at this time we had our oldest and our middle child. So she was 1. And I was like, no, you can still move. I'm okay. I had already done all the calculations. And he was like, no, I'm going to make sure that you all are taken care of and that everything is where it needs to be. And if once you get a job and you get on your feet, if you still want to do this, then okay, I'll move. And I was like, okay. And I said it very begrudgingly too. I was like, all right. So that never happened.
And so from there, by God's grace, there was a lot of regrowth. I learned how to stand up on my own 2 feet. I went from Neanderthal to bipedal, and I actually ended up, we went through counseling. We went through marriage counseling together. She went through counseling on her own. I went through some more counseling, victims of violent crimes. Went through, we both had a series of growth that we had to go through. And we had to place boundaries around our relationship. I had to place boundaries around my role as a husband and separate that from my role as son. And that's when we started actually dating again. We would meet for lunch.
Well, and there was another couple that was very instrumental in us working through this. That's one thing that kind of leads us to being married into crazy. So we had, they were like, it was his aunt and uncle. And they were like, nope, we're not doing that. You know, kind of, you're going to come with us. We're going to take you under our wings and we're going to just be, they never did any formal, like you sit here, I'll sit here and we just, you know, we're going to talk about what happened. They didn't do any of that. They just brought us into their company, and it was just like we were able to reconnect. It's like they knew what we needed when we were telling them what was going on, kind of in a way. They were like, "No, we're not getting down like that. Y'all gonna work this out." And and I was thinking, okay, if that's what you think, but my mind's still made up. But it was them they were very instrumental. We would have our own little talks individually. It wasn't anything like, you two sit here and let's just talk it out. But they just nugget after nugget after nugget, just kind of, sharing themselves with us and giving just examples of some of the hardships that they went through. So that kind of,
they were our marriage coaches before there were marriage coaches.
Before we knew that they were our marriage coaches, basically.
And I was just reflecting on that right now, and it's funny. They were also the only healthy married couple that we had access to. That was it. They modeled what they modeled for us, was something that we could aspire to. And it just so happened it was my aunt and uncle, but it was one of those things where then it became, okay, that's who we need to be like. We need to be like them, not our parents. As God bless them, love our parents, but not our parents who had multiple divorces. Mm-hmm. That's like taking financial advice from the guy living under the bridge. Yeah. So, but it worked out well in our favor. And that's when the work really began, because then it was like, okay, happily ever after is directly connected to, working ever after as well. It's going to take some work, but it's worth it. But you got to be committed to the covenant.
Absolutely. And I believe that, especially today, most people don't want the work. They want the fairy tale. And when work comes up, they feel like, well, if we have to work for this, then we're not in love. And I've heard that many a times. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. What do you get without putting in work? And your story is interesting because I had a similar story with our marriage and our relationship. I did not really set those boundaries in the beginning, because in our family, the elders always were able to step in, and they came and they regulated things. So when we would have arguments or when we would have disagreements, I would call my mom and they'd be like, okay, Mom, what am I supposed to do? What can you talk? Can you do this? And then my wife was like, why are you doing that? Why are you always getting your, and I didn't understand it in the beginning because I had always seen it happen. I seen my grandma run her house. I seen my great grandparents run my grandma's house and their house, and it always moved around. And even when my dad was alive and after he got out of prison, he kind of ran everybody's house. Like, they respected him. He went in, he made the decisions, he broke up the stuff. So I was always used to seeing outside influences come and control it. I thought that was the way it was supposed to be. And just being young in marriage and not understanding communication, of course, we didn't really talk about the real problem. We just argued about the issues, but never got to the root. So I totally understand where you're coming from with setting those boundaries. Ever since I have done that and continue to work and get stronger in that area, we're able to have more free conversations. We're able to handle things on our own and not have to have that outside influence. And like you guys, some of the couples that were instrumental in just example were pastors from our church. Him, the lead pastor and his wife, the associate pastor and his wife, some of the stronger couples in the church that had that example. So without that, we have BET and Housewives of Atlanta tell us what marriage looks like, which we just show. So once you begin this work and you decided not to go through with the divorce, what did that work look like? What steps did you guys take to not only reconnect, but to be in love again?
I think the first, gosh, what was the first thing?
We were both working corporate jobs, and what we somehow or another we decided that, because even though we were roommates more than anything else, so then we decided that what we needed to do, I don't know if it was our aunt and uncle's idea or how it came about, but we decided what we needed to do is meet on neutral ground and just talk. So we found a place that was halfway between basically where I worked and where she worked. And mind you, we go to the same house at night, but we found a spot, and then like once a week, we would actually meet for lunch.
And it was very awkward in the very beginning. I think those were some of the quietest lunches we ever had. We just kind of sat there, and we were extremely polite. If there was no type of, I'm stiff and he's stiff, and it's like we're just like strangers trying to rediscover each other. One thing I had to do was just I really had to dig deep and get down in prayer. And just, okay, Lord, because my heart started to harden, and I had to really pray about this hardened heart of mine, and it was just so funny too, because even through all of this that was going on, the Lord was telling me, do not do this. Don't go down this road. Don't go down. And I was just like, anyway, I ain't trying to hear you, Lord. Okay, I know, whatever. But I mean, I promise you, it was just like, is as audible as Lovey is right here. He's like, don't do this. Don't do this. It was like, nope. The more plans I made, he kept on saying, don't do this, don't do this. Now, mind you, I loved my job. And I was like, oh, shoot, I got a good job anyway. So, bye, you can do whatever. He's like, all right, so since you want to be hard-headed, I'm just going to take the little job away from you. I was like, what? Why you do that, Lord? But so that got my attention. So then I had to really think about, what is it that I said that I wanted in a husband? And what was it about Lovey that made me recognize and say that he is the guy? And so I had to really just start peeling back just layer after layer after layer, and just dealing with my anger and my hurt, my disappointments, and, just really honing in and saying what's really wrong. Us having conversations and being very honest and communicating, because our communication was almost non-existent. We were too polite, and we were trying to, like I said, it was like what is that, the pink elephant in the room or something, whatever that is. That's, it was almost like trying to, okay, well, we can't. So when we felt free to just be, okay, so it's good to, okay, we can talk about it. So, we were able to just start having conversation. And then before I knew it, words just started coming out of my mouth, and same thing with him. And I was like, well, I felt that way too. And he was like, okay, well, that's what, and, so we had to learn how to communicate and stuff.
Communication was a huge part. We had to relearn. It's almost like you see these shows where you hear about people that had a traumatic injury and they lost their voice and they had to relearn how to speak, or we had to refine our voice, but make it better, stronger, and make sure that it projected well enough to where it was really about our relationship. And the one thing we always come back to is that submission. Mm-hmm. We had to both become submissive. I had to become submissive to God. And honestly, I had to submit to being vulnerable and making sure that I was all in on making sure she was taken care of and she was safe. That had to become my priority, even over our children. And a lot of people take issue with that at times, but it was just that we had to make sure that we were good, because at some point we had to model in, because we know that eyes were going to be on us. If we're taking care of each other, the kids are going to be all right. They're going to follow us and they're going to follow suit, but we're also to teach them what to expect as well. But a lot of it comes back to submitting to each other and submitting to the relation, the covenant of marriage, and not letting anything come in and attack that.
Absolutely. So you guys start doing the work and you're growing, you're communicating again. Were there any other near divorce events that occurred, or did you make that a non-negotiable? Okay, we overcame this, we're coming back. That word doesn't enter the house anymore. We're not going to even go down that path.
That's what I'm saying is. So two things came to mind when you asked that question.
What?
We have a couple of sayings that we joke around about.
Oh.
The first one is, we said, till death do we part. If you want to get out of this, somebody got to die. Somebody got to go. And then the other thing we joke about is, look, hey, you mess up, they might find you in 7 different states.
Whatever.
And And that's usually about her. Because if I come home and I smell like ammonia or whatever, I'm looking for the plastic bags and the latex gloves. And I'm like, did I mess up? Did I do something? But no, but we joke that, no, we're in this for life. And, you know, we just spoke to another couple on our podcast about what they were doing. And one thing that he used a phrase that I thought was crucial. And he had said that he realized when he was facing a divorce that he had always been trying to outrun his parents' relationship because of what they went through. And when he said that the other day, it clicked for us that that's what we were doing. We had talked about, you know, divorce is never going to be an option. And yet we were right on divorce was knocking at our door. The door was open and we tried walking through at the same time. And that's why we got stuck.
Well, and then too, I feel like, because like you said about our parents, we've seen our parents go through the trials that they've gone through. Okay, oh, money issue. Okay, we can deal with that. You know, I don't think he'd be cheating, and I'm not going to be cheating. So, okay, that's going to be a non-issue. All the things that I thought were on a list of reasons to be divorced, none of that even happened, pretty much. But the trauma that I've never. Okay, well, ex-boyfriend stabs fiance. Oh, how do we deal with that? That's not something that I knew how to deal with. And all of, like Lovey said, the collateral damage and that the weight that I carried for so very long. I just had to kind of learn how to let it go and just kind of, you know, okay, that happened, but we're stronger for it. And then, you know, now we don't talk about divorce. I wish he would try to leave me.
and we really haven't for 20 years. It's one of those things where we believe in the work. We believe in the work that if it's meant to be, it's not one of those things. If it's meant to be, it's just going to happen because we love each other.
Yeah.
No, if it's meant to be, then, you know, it's time to roll up your sleeves.
Well, but that is true too. If it's meant to be, it's going to be, because we're going to do the work to make it happen, because we're going to make sure that we stay together.
Yep.
You know, so.
Absolutely. And just again, this generation of thought of I'm going to flee at the first signs of trouble. A lot of times it doesn't even be real trouble. It'd be small things, bickering, right, or lingering eyes, all those things that people allow to enter their marriages because they don't have boundaries. And then it's just a contract to them, so they quit. Now, when we think about putting that work in, and you guys have done it, what made you decide to now create the Married into Crazy podcast and go and get certified with the DISC? Tell us about that journey for both of you and how you use that to coach marriages and why. Why is that a passion? Because a lot of people have great marriages and a lot of people go through things and they overcome it. They don't become coaches. So why did you guys decide that this was the thing for you to do?
I think, well, for me, I think Anthony, our nephew, he lived with us a couple of times, but he would always, we would be in the kitchen or just in the front room, and he would sit and just listen to us, and he'd laugh. He'd be like, Amy, you guys are so funny. He said, Amy, you guys should have your own show. Amy, I'm telling you, you guys should blah, 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 whatever. And then when people, you know, they'll ask, oh, how'd you guys meet? And then they hear our story, and everyone's just like, wow, are you serious? Kind of like that, you know, I think that was like, okay, there's so many people out there, kind of like you said, that have these problems or they perceive problems or issues. We've gone through some real major stuff and we've been able to overcome it and we've been able to continue on. So why not share? You know, my mom always shared herself with me as far as like the mistakes that she made growing up. And it's like it's about teaching the next generation or someone else that you can help. I'm very big on that. I'm very open. Same thing with our girls, with our son. We discuss like, okay, these are the mistakes that we made, or these are the things that we did. And I feel like, well, even in the Bible, in Titus, it says, teach them how to be, basically. And so that resonates with me. You know, we need to be out there, because people are always thinking, oh, well, you know, 50% divorce, blah, blah, blah. It's not a big deal. It's just piece of paper. No, it's not just piece of paper. It's, you know, it's something that can be done. You can get through it. If we can get through it, oh my gosh, I promise you, anybody could probably do this if we can do it, you know. Barring abuse, that we always say that, you know.
Barring abuse. You know, and a number of years ago, I mean, a long time ago, when we were early in our relationship, people had approached me and said, oh, you should, you know, you have a voice for radio. I'm like, is that really your way of saying I have a face for radio? And like, oh, you should be. So I looked into doing voiceovers and all of that. And I thought, you know, but that's not my calling. I never felt like that was something I was supposed to do. Interesting, but not a calling. And when you go through, I've had several near-death experiences, not quite to the extent of that. I've totaled a car on a major highway, interstate, you know, because I fell asleep at the wheel. And I've had several different things happen, even when I was in the service. And once the stabbing took place, and for a long time, I kept thinking, why am I still alive? Because no matter who we spoke with, you know, my sister's a physician. She has a cousin that's a physician. And if you talk to anybody, I even bumped into the anesthesiologist that was my anesthesiologist during the surgery. Completely crazy story, but we recognized each other's eyes. Wow. And we had to make a connection, like, I know you from somewhere. But even then, she was like, you're not even supposed to be alive. I mean, those were her words. And so I was always wondering, why? And then 2018, August 2018, I heard about this guy, Eric Thomas. And about actually May of that year, May of 2018, I had heard CJ, you know, ET's right-hand guy, talking about Eric Thomas on a different podcast, on Sean Stevenson's podcast, on the Model Health Show. And I'm like, this guy sounds pretty cool. I should probably check him out. I haven't listened to podcasts, mind you, for the last like 6-7 years. Never heard of ET.
Yeah.
So I check him out. I'm like, this guy sounds legit. So I'm listening to him like, this is cool. And I found out they're going to do something in San Francisco. We live right outside Sacramento. So we thought, you know what? I kind of want to do this. And Snooks was listening on the DL because I had turned her on to it. And so then we both agreed, like, you know, let's go. And we had that speech. Okay, we're going to go in here.
We ain't buying nothing. If they try to tell you to buy something, we ain't getting no books. We ain't doing none of that. We just want to go look.
Right? And so we went, and they didn't try to sell us anything. It was just all about, you know, whatever you're going to do, be the best at it. And it was just pure motivation, pure, you know, it wasn't about them doing anything. It was about them trying to encourage you to be the best version of you. We were in the car driving home. We had like about an hour 45, almost 2-hour drive coming home. And that day, we were like, that was a Sunday. That day, we're like, we're going to do a podcast.
Okay. Not we. That was Lovey. Okay. I'm just saying. It was all Lovey, because he was like, oh, we should do a podcast. And I was like, okay. I don't even like how I sound. Why are we going to do a podcast? You know, I don't have the radio voice. You do. and the Married into Crazy piece, at first, the original show was called the Snooks and Lovey Show.
Okay.
And then I was listening to podcasts on how to do a podcast. And one thing kept coming up. If you say you have a podcast and you say your title and somebody has to say, well, what's that about? Then that's the wrong title. because then you got to sit there and define what it is.
Right.
Well, years ago, all the guys, a good portion of us gentlemen, that married into her family, one day we were at the VFW for a function, and we noticed all the guys were in the bar having a drink. And so I just, in the spur of the moment, I held my glass up and said, I want to propose a toast to all those fellas in this room that married into crazy. and it's been a joke within the family for a number of years. They all got mugs, MIC. Married into crazy. And so when I made that decision, like, you know, we're going to change the name of this because let's call it exactly what we did. And that was Married into Crazy. And so, but from the jump street, it was always about, we need to share with other couples. We need to help other people get through their challenges, because even our monochrome, this says, you know, if you look on our website, it says, you know, that basically our podcast and our website's about love, laughter, and overcoming adversity in marriage. And that's what our podcast is all about. And it's our way of giving back. And I know it in my core, she knows it in her core, that's why I was spared. That's why we're still together, is that sometimes you go through stuff, the Lord has you go through things, so that way you can help usher other people through it.
Yep, absolutely. Right? I'm a firm believer in that. those things that we want the God to bring us out of, get me out of this, take it away, are the things that are meant to mold and shape us into who we are for His will and His mission, His purpose, and
Right.
that to draw others unto Him. So
Come on.
there's a specific reason why you met, even when you didn't want to meet in the beginning, had all the trauma, was ready to walk away, and He was like, nope. Divine intervention. I'm gonna just move these little pieces around and get you guys together. And now we just don't know the impact, because I know you said you wanted to reach millions of couples, and with your voice, the podcast, that's the way, because now millions of people can hear your story, know what you guys have come through. So at that point, you now have a reason. You have your purpose, you have your mission and your goals. And I know you were following ET, listening to him, and I know that you are on that D and I side, and she's on the S and C, just because of my awareness of the assessment. When did you begin to integrate that, and how has it helped?
Good question. I personally have been exposed to the DISC assessment multiple times in the corporate structures that I've belonged to. And I've taken everything under the sun, Myers-Briggs. The only thing I don't think I've done is the Enneagram, but I've done so many other ones. I even have a friend, one of my old managers, that went to another company and has this amazing other personality index type program that they run for team building and so forth. But when Chris Daniels, because in San Francisco we had the opportunity to meet Chris, and when Chris Daniels came through and they're talking about, oh, it's gonna be DISC, and I'm like, okay, I know this. It's funny, if you look, there's a media picture that ET and those guys have that they put out where it has E at the front of the room talking, and there's this, you can see me clearly looking at him like, really, dude? I had this look of, okay, been there, done that.
Snarky look on his face. Yes, that was all Lovey.
Because I was still expecting the sales pitch.
He's still waiting for him to sell him.
But when Chris took us through that, it hit me in a way that I think I'd done it like 3 or 4 times prior, that it never hit me before. It was the delivery, it was the way that it was proctored, the way it was explained, maybe the way I received it. And then we thought, oh, this is good. And I told her back then, I'm like, this is something that we might be able to use down the road. But at that time, they were just administering it. Nobody could get certified.
Okay.
And so he wasn't certifying, but then there was another coach that had worked with ET in the past that was doing it. So I thought, okay, let me just go ahead and maybe look at them. And I contacted them. Nope, we're not doing any type of certifications outside of people that work for our company. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just not meant to be. So fast forward, I talked to Quest. Quest Green's another person. So I reached out to him, and Quest was like, oh, just hold it. He said, hold on tight. Something's coming down the pike. And when they started the certification process, another coach that CB Phillips and I were like, okay, we're all over this. When this comes up and they make it real, we're going to jump on it. See, CB and I had said, because we're both high Ds, we started reaching out to the companies like Innermetrix and a variety of other companies I called Brian Arzani, the president of Innermetrix, directly. So he and I had conversations, and I'm reaching out to him, like, well, nobody else is doing this, so I want to get certified. I want to do this. So all this stuff was going on. That's just my nature. If I create a goal and I say I'm going to do something, then I'll build a plane midair, right? I'll jump up and build the plane and hope to catch me before I hit the ground. And in doing that, I figured this is going to be a way that's going to help me be able to at least connect with, some individuals. And then my mind started expanding. Okay, well, we could use this for couples. But Snooks was like, okay, fine, go have fun with that. And the more I did and used the family as guinea pigs, she started to notice that the way we spoke to each other changed. And I think I had to change a little bit with the way I had to, the way I started addressing everyone, trying at least to be better in my communication style with each one of the individual personalities within our family, instead of addressing everybody as a pilot or a high D, high I individual. I had to try and when she saw me making effort to speak her language, not successful, but effort, then I think it opened her up. And that's why we both, she just recently became certified herself.
Well, for me, it was more about, I feel like there may be people who resonate with me a little better than they do with Lovey because of his personality. And, you know, if you didn't know him and you hear him talk, and it can be misconstrued as like, okay, he's a little bit too arrogant. He might be a little bit too cocky, you know? So someone that's a little bit more laid back, or don't want someone just like, okay, what do we, you know, I was like, maybe there's a different avenue. They might feel more comfortable with me. So we kind of decided together, not that he's doing anything wrong, because I'm like, okay, dude, you can take the lead on the disc, you know, I'll do the other stuff. But he's like, nope, you in it now. So
that's funny. And that became evident in one of the couples that we just recently worked with over one of our 6-week coaching periods. And it was funny that she and I each appealed to one of them. And it got to the point where she had to say something for one of them to really receive it. And then when I would say something, when she would say it, the other person was like, okay, whatever. But then I would pretty much say the exact same thing, but in my manner. And then
they'd be like, oh, okay.
Then the other one that was more likely to be like, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
I'm like, really? No.
So it's nice that we both kind of cover the spectrum and we're able to have those discussions. Now, it still drives me nuts when we get into the S and the C mode, but I recognize that everybody isn't like me.
Yeah.
And I'm not like everybody. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So when you're thinking, and now, because I love the disc and I've fallen in love with just understanding that when you communicate with someone in their language, the way they receive it, it makes them feel comfortable. It builds a stronger connection. You have more understanding. And I think that helps 10 times better than just saying, work on your communication skills. We got all kind of things that you can try to do, but when you really understand why, and for me, what was eye opener for my marriage was, I'm a 99D, 99I, which I'm like you, E. I love to go ahead and get it done. Like, I'm moving fast. And then my wife is the one who's like, did you check this? Mm-hmm. Really? When? What happened was my immediate emotion, because I was immature, was, why is she questioning me? You don't trust me? You don't believe me? I got it. But then I started to learn that she is looking for that safety. She is going through the check, and she's actually supporting me, not distrust. She's trying to be supportive, trying to make sure we do it right. And I say, man, if she didn't keep us out of some things by just checking, double checking, making sure we're on the deadline. I was like, one of my neighbors had texted me. He said, you know, the kids can get meals from school for free. And I was like, yeah, how you didn't know that? He was like, and then I had to think about it. I'm like, my wife told me. I don't think I would know if she didn't tell me. So it's the things I'm starting to think about now, where she is really supportive, really, really just that backbone that keeps everything together. I mean, the glue that holds everything together, and making sure that we do it the right way. So that's how the assessment has helped my marriage. And definitely, I mean, sometimes we move a little slow. Sometimes when I start sweating, you ask me a whole lot of questions because I'm ready to move. I'm ready to do it. I'm like, can we just execute? But there's a season for planning. And then for us pilots, there's a season where we got to go ahead and make the decision. But now I live and fall with the decision. It's my responsibility. If she said, you know what, I'm going to let you do it, I got to deal with whatever consequence that comes from that. So it's definitely helpful. You're years and years in the game. You've seen it all, heard it all, been through much more than what a lot of people would. What are your tips? What are things that you guys do to still stay in love? Because we know that there are cycles, there are seasons, and sometimes we grow. And as we're changing, we may grow apart. We may fall out of love. What are some of the things you guys do to remain in love? And I know pickleball might not be one. I listened to that pickleball episode, And what are some of the things you do to keep your relationship growing and that work going?
I think one thing that we do, we play a lot. We are like so silly and we play, we don't take ourselves too serious. Not most of the time. Lovey, he's a little rigid at times. I'm like, you let that Air Force stuff go, okay? Slouch your back. You can hunch over or something like that. You can say y'all, or, you don't have to enunciate everything. So I try to, we play.
Man. Okay.
We play around, we have a good time. We laugh, obviously, you see us laughing, but we laugh together. We play together, I take time for him sometimes even when I don't want to be bothered. I'm just like, okay, I'll take one for the team. And then he does the same thing for me. We are considerate of each other, that's my take.
She allows me to remain childish.
He's so goofy. Lovey is so corny. I'm like, baby, that's not. Mm-mm.
To the point where it drives the kids crazy because I'll sing everything to them, and it drives them nuts. Like, why do you got to sing that? You're just ruining this
the song.
Like, there was an episode. I posted something a while back and I reposted it. One daughter was singing Minnie Riperton's song, "Loving You," and she was singing it in the bathroom. So I videotaped myself going up and walking up to the door, waiting for a chorus, and I tried singing with her and singing, and she stopped. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, it's a duet. It's a duet." I go, "You're messing up my part. Come on now." And she's like, "You're killing it for me." And it's just stuff like that. If they see the phone in my hand, they run because they think I'm going to do something crazy with it. But it's for us that we love life. And here's the thing. I don't know that it's that easy for everyone. I think it comes natural for me and for us because I was on death's doorstep. Mm-hmm. There was a possible DOA. I take absolutely nothing for granted. Now, are there days where I get caught up in the minutia? And absolutely. Mm-hmm. But I'm also that same person that there's times where it's like, I tell them all the time, it's not that serious. Let that go. Is it really a bad day or is it like a bad 30 seconds? But now we're going to try and make it a whole bad day around those 30 seconds that went wrong.
And we love when he does that because that's ammo for when he gets on one. I'm like, is it really a bad day or is it just really bad 30 seconds?
We have our moments, but ultimately though, like there's always stuff that's going to get you down. But I just feel like I love life. And I don't know that it's not guaranteed. The Lord showed me that. So it's one of those things where I want to spend as much time. And I tell her time and time again, I wish that we had the opportunity to spend 5 more lifetimes together because I love being in her presence most of the time. Machine on my last nerve. And I don't know. It's a lot of fun. We do joke, we laugh with each other.
I think too, we have common goals. We have things and we have common interests. So, I mean, that right there, I'm not trying to do something here and he has his own projects going on and we're steadily going this way. Our stuff brings us together, not that every second of the day we have to be, oh my God, we're right here. No, but our goals, our projects or whatever, they bring us together. And even when he has his own thing going on, I'm like, okay, so right now I'm in the supportive role. So I know how to support him. He needs space. Okay. And we read each other like, oh, okay, you're foul right now. I'm just going to leave you alone. I'm going to go over here. I don't throw that in his face and he doesn't throw it in mine. We understand we need our space and we need whatever, but I always know we're going to come back together. I don't feel like I have to worry about whether he's going to be here. And I don't mean like, oh, is he going to get in an accident? But I mean like, is he going to be here? Lovey is present. He's accessible and he's here. He's all right. I'm right here. What you need, we're accountable to each other. So
very much so. And the last thing I'll say is, I don't know if it was by design or just the way that we've maneuvered or come about this, but we've both adopted a growth mindset. I think in relationships, we have a tendency as two individuals coming together. Unfortunately, you hear about people getting a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. That fixed mindset is, well, that's just who she is. She's always going to be like that. And so whatever, you do you, I'm going to do me. And there's no changing. And you had made a comment, Tyrus, about how we've been in the game for a while and, you've seen everything, done everything. But I don't agree with that. I believe that we may have seen a lot, but there's so much more of her I still need to discover. So much more as she evolves that so much I'm going to change. Because if we're the same person we were 24 years ago, then there's a problem. And
I want him to discover how I clean up so he can clean up too.
That's where I have a fixed mindset. Because I'm going to clean the mirrors like I want to clean the mirrors. I don't care if there's a streak or two.
Just want you to have that part of me. Just discover that, okay?
So as soon as she learns how to iron my creases.
I know you're ashamed. That's what the laundromat is for.
So growth mindset.
Absolutely. So many similarities with you guys because I don't see dust in the house. My wife sees it everywhere. It's so dusty. I'm like, oh, really? Or think like clutter. She doesn't like clutter. And I'm like, I don't really see a whole lot of stuff. So I do understand that those fixed and growth mindset moments. I think I have selective blindness.
Amen.
Absolutely. And another thing that you guys really said that I also had to learn was giving each other space. Because I was so used to watching people, we got to talk about this right now and handle it right now. And she was like, I need some space. And I'm like, no, we're going to talk about it. And so that caused, contention, that caused a lot of problems, a lot of issues, a lot of arguments that didn't have to be. So as we go through marriage, we do understand and learn who we are. And also the fact that we're two different people with two different mindsets, two different backgrounds. The way we were raised were different. And when you bring two different people together, you have to work in order to become that one unit. So it's all about work, all about growth. I got to ask, where did the nicknames come from?
When we were dating, Lovey was working at Home Depot. And I'm real big on just doing little surprises. Like I want him to be like, oh, that's so sweet, whatever. So I was like, I'm going to go to his job, take him a card. That buy a bear or something? I think a little teddy bear or something like that. So I took him a card and I was writing in it. And I was like, Lovey, I like that name. So I said, we're going to get nicknames. I didn't say it, we're getting nicknames and that's it. But I just started calling him the nickname Lovey. So he's been Lovey since 1995, except for when I'm mad, he's Ernest at that point.
And, I don't know where Snooks came from. I think I was joking around like Snookums or whatever. And I didn't like Snookums, so then we just shortened it to Snooks. But I don't know where I got it from, but when I did, it just took. So it's just been Snooks and Lovey to the point where the family for years, the aunts and uncles,
the elders. They're like, oh, where's Lovey at? Like, oh, Snooks, I need you. I'm like, don't call me that. That's not for you to call me.
Right. That's the marriage nicknames, not the family nicknames.
So now it's, now it's us and our clients.
Yeah, Snooks and Lovey. Yep.
Gotcha. So there's you guys mentioned it being and talking about just problems, issues, bad days, and not making things bigger than what they are. We saw a marriage counselor one time and he said, you have $100 problems, you have dollar problems. Which one do you give the most focus to? And we're like, So we started to talk about what are our non-negotiables? What are the things that are really the things that we need to see eye to eye on? How we parent, religion, those big things, those major things. How do we see eye to eye? And what we learned was we see eye to eye on all of that. It was the little things that were picking and causing the hiccups. So just growing over that, learning that was very helpful. And I segue into that to ask this: between marriage counseling and marriage coaching, what's the difference?
So she may have a more clinical answer for you.
No.
She just got her BS in sociology, and she's next year going
emphasis on social work.
Excuse me. And she's actually going through like a 13-week counselor's course to sharpen skills and all that. My counseling is usually through a licensed individual. That's the way I view it. It's through a licensed professional that is actually going to take you through more of a clinical rotation, if you will, or a clinical approach to it. And then when you look at coaching like we provide, our coaching is more like, okay, we're going to get around the campfire. We're going to get out in the backyard. This is where you let your hair down. You can get the tension out of your shoulders. We're just going to chop it up with you, talk to you as another couple that's gone through some stuff that we found some solutions. Doesn't mean our solutions work for you, but it does let you know that we can model that you can get through just about anything. And you'll be surprised at how many people are much more genuine when they're talking to a marriage coach, that they feel like, okay, this is the couple next door that I can just talk to. That's a third party that has no interest in one succeeding over the other as far as the spouses are concerned. But when you get into a clinical situation, there's a lot of tension. There can be a lot of tension. There can be times where it's like, well, this person don't know me and I'm not going to share everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you have that tension release, or there's a lack of it, they're more open and honest. Just like what we say in our podcast, it's an opportunity for people to listen to us, because it's like being a fly on the wall and getting your ear hustle on with a couple that are just having the same conversations. What we talk about on the podcast, on the microphone, it's the same conversations that we were having at the kitchen table or in the living room. Mm-hmm. That's when we decided, you know what, we should put this on a podcast. And we just took the conversations from there to here and put it on the microphone. Same thing with our coaching. The clients that we've had from a coaching standpoint, you know, even in their own words, they say that we love it because we feel like you're just like us. You've just been through more stuff. So it opens them up to solutions versus going to see a counselor. It's like, well, this person hasn't been through what I've been through. Because a counselor, more times than not, isn't going to share what they went through, their life. They're coming from a clinical perspective. We're coming from a life experiential perspective.
Good. That's good. And I just have I've seen my share of counselors that I've heard, and what a pet peeve for me is, hold on, you ain't even married. How long you been married? I've been married longer than you. Or, you know, that same thing if you're going to business school and that business professor doesn't own a business. They're teaching all theory. It's not that practical, that been through that fire. It's just something different when you're dealing with people that have been through something similar or just overarching in the relationship. Snooks, you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of give my little Lovey be taken up all the time. I'm like, are you serious right now?
That's not high.
Anyway, so this is how I look at it. A coach is going to work you through it. You know, it's like when you play basketball. You have a basketball coach. The coach is going to tell you, okay, this is how you, and then dribble this way or whatever. And okay, so keep practicing this and they'll give you steps to do. Not that counselors won't, but I always think about the coach is the action. You know, okay, I'm whipping you into shape, or I'm helping you get into shape so that you're ready for the game. With the counselor, it's like the counselor is someone you go to, I'm going to tell you my problem, like in school. I need to go see my counselor because I got an issue with this. And so you and the counselor, you sit down, okay, so tell me about blah, blah, blah. And you talk through it more, and the counselor will maybe try to get an understanding of it. Not that they won't help you, but they're not the action, just me. It's not, the action is coming from the coach that's out there with, okay, let's go. Okay, so get ready. Okay, because we got this or we got that. So that's how I look at it, even though it could go the other way too for the counselor. Because actually, like he said, I'm trying to get him a little certificate for counseling, but I like coach better just because it's more action oriented.
Absolutely. And I agree. I agree that it's definitely, when you go to a counselor, they give you a whole bunch of theory, a whole bunch of this may work, a whole bunch of try this. They're not calling you, hey, did you go through these action steps? Did you try these things? There's a little less fire behind you. And it does feel more personable when you can talk to a coach or someone who seems to have your best interest and not just looking at you like a piece of paper. And some
Absolutely.
people go to these counselors and they start picking ones that see their side a little bit more. I've heard stories of like, I don't like that counselor. He's on her side. It's just different types of things. So that's one piece that I love that you guys have, is that you're both together doing this. So you can be there as a couple. So it's not one-sided. My pastor and his wife, they do the same. They won't do couples counseling without each other unless you specifically ask that. But usually it's both of them, so you can get both perspectives. And I think it's just stronger. And one person doesn't know everything. And like you said, when we have those different communication preferences, then you need someone that's speaking the other person's language. What's next for Snooks and Lovey?
It's good that you ask us that. It's getting better. It's sharpening the iron, right? It's sharpening the sword. It's working with more couples because it's what we love to do. We have a board over here that's got these ideas of things that we want to accomplish. There's going to be a book. There's workshops. There's all these different things that we want to do, conferences that we want to put on down the road. But none of that really matters unless we're staying true to our first mission, our core mission, which is to help other couples. And so what's next is for us to continue doing what we're doing right now, and just touching more lives, assisting them in getting to where they want to be, right? It's about, and here's the thing, we just talked about this, that there's a lot of couples that think, oh, I don't need coaching. My marriage is good. We all right. We good. We're okay.
Yeah, we're good.
And the challenge in that is that the greatest enemy of having a phenomenal or a great marriage is a good marriage, or a marriage that's just okay.
Yeah.
And you can't seek stagnation in anything. You know what? Still water, if water stays still long enough, it becomes poison.
Yeah.
Same thing with our marriages. If your marriage is good, congratulations. I commend you on that. But don't let it just stay good, because good can become stale, stale can become poison. So we want to really raise awareness that if you have a good marriage, what's wrong with making it a great marriage? If you have a great marriage, what's wrong with making it a phenomenal marriage? And if you get to the point where you have a phenomenal marriage through and through, then you should be reaching back and helping other couples. And I'm not saying that we're phenomenal. I just think that
I'm phenomenal.
she's phenomenal. I'm a work in progress.
What are you talking about?
But we are working with other people, so that, because I want to surround myself with many more phenomenal couples, great couples, because we believe, just like in Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, we believe that as iron sharpens iron, each couple should be sharpening each other as well. So we talk about creating an iron tribe, and we want to expand that iron tribe to where we're surrounding ourselves and creating a community. The best way to solve a lot of the ills when it comes to relationships in the world, that statistic about the marriages, 50% of marriages end in divorce. We want to really have some part in putting a dent in that, to where if we can have good, better, great or phenomenal marriages in your community, in your neighborhood, then that can expand out to your city, then that can expand out to the state and to the nation. If we can have some part of that, that's what I think God has put us here to do.
That's right. Yeah.
Phenomenal. How can people reach you? How can they follow you? How can they find you?
Well, you can always find us at marriedintocrazy.com. Pretty straightforward. That's our website. That's our coaching platform. There's a lot of things that are there. It talks about what we do to help couples. You can also listen to our podcast, Married into Crazy with Snooks and Lovey. It's on every major venue, from Amazon Music to Pandora to iHeartRadio to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music. Seriously, anywhere you can download a podcast, I guarantee you can find. Ghana over in India. There's a variety of places. And then we also have our YouTube channel, which is a little anemic, but we're growing the YouTube channel.
Whatever. Our email too, snooksandlovey@gmail.com. We get people send us little letters, or on our Tuesday live, we send us a question, we'll answer it, live. And so we get questions and people ask. Some of them are real serious, some are kind of silly, but it's fun. So
it is.
And then a good time.
We have an Iron Tribe text community. If you love to text, you can always text us, and it does come directly to us at 918-351-2799. And so there's a variety of ways. And of course, all social media is at Married Into Crazy.
Phenomenal.
Facebook and all that. Mhm.
That's phenomenal. I'm just so happy that we had this conversation, this interview, whatever you want to call it, because there are people out there hurting in their relationships, in their marriages, and there are also people out there wondering if marriages still can they work. And so just having your example, your guidance, your leadership, showing us that, hey, things can happen, things will happen, but if you are willing to dig down deep, put the work in and push through, you can have a successful and phenomenal marriage as well. I would like to thank both of you for joining me. It was absolute pleasure. Anything that I can do to support, I would definitely be sending people your way. I'm joining the Iron Tribe as well. So I want to come get sharp. I want to keep learning. I want to keep growing because I have lots and lots of years and I just want to make this marriage, our marriage, even better to follow examples like yours.
So let me just say something real quick too. Now, okay, it's Married Into Crazy, but I just want people to understand it's not a negative when we say crazy. Crazy is actually an acronym. So it's crazy is compassionate, real, accountable, zealous, and yielding. So that's when we say we're married into crazy, we married into compassion, we're real, we're accountable to each other, we're zealous, and we're also yielding. So that's what the crazy stands for. It's not a negative like, oh, this man is bananas, you know. Sometimes he is a little bananas, but you know, that's what the crazy stands for. And that's what, when we do our coaching, whatever the issues are, we try to, okay, so how can we be crazy in this situation? How can we walk in compassion? How can we be real? You know, we have to learn how to be accountable to each other. And, you know, so that's what that stands for.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying because I know some people are like, they crazy. But it was great to come and just show us what that really means and also take that negative spin and turn it into positivity. A lot of times we have those quirks in our relationships that if we only took and spun them just a little bit, we would see our partner in a whole different light. Again, thank you guys for joining me. I thank everyone that is listening, watching, wherever you are, for joining us for another episode of the Empowerment Platform, where our mission is to empower you to reach your goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.